Tiana Kuffman highlights Bitcoin's potential, emphasizing its role as a store of value in an increasingly inflationary financial system. She argues that Bitcoin's scarcity, with only 21 million coins available, makes it an attractive alternative investment, potentially reaching valuations of $500,000 or even $1 million. She recommends a minimum of 10% portfolio allocation to Bitcoin, anticipating increased institutional adoption and a pro-innovative regulatory framework.
Current financial system is failing.
So I think what a lot of people haven't learned in school, and unfortunately have to learn the hard way now, is the way our system is structured is it's very inflationary. So a lot of people's wealth has eroded 30-40% over the last 4 years since the COVID regulations have come in. And people are trying to realize that they need to store wealth in alternative ways, whether it's in gold or in real estate or in things like Bitcoin.
Okay, so let's talk about your expectation for Bitcoin. You say you're waiting for the moment it hits 100K. It's gotten very close it's trading around 96,000 right now, so off about almost, or actually just below 95,000 right now. So I'm assuming you're expecting that soon, but then what? Where does it go? What's your price target for Bitcoin?
So I think in the short term, we're going to see one of two cases. The first case is we're going to have some sideways action between 110 and downwards to 80, and we'll see some chop. The second scenario, and that will come either in the short term or in the medium term, is once we have the Bitcoin Act, which is currently under consideration, passed, where the U.S. government will be buying Bitcoin into its reserves, as well as other countries and other corporates for their treasury assets as well, we could see a 500K Bitcoin or $1 million Bitcoin. The sky is really the limit here.
And why? What would drive it there?
So Bitcoin is inherently a scarce asset. You only have 21 million Bitcoins. And the Bitcoin Act, for example, proposes buying 200,000 Bitcoins a year, which would significantly drive up the price as there's a finite supply.
And what about use cases? I was talking about this with a guest on a previous show on Trading 360, just in terms of, President-elect Trump has talked about, the one rule of Bitcoin is you don't sell your Bitcoin. Yeah. But do you expect more people to actually start using it in terms of an actual currency?
For sure. So I don't think that Bitcoin is inherently the type of currency that you buy a cup of coffee with. There are places where people do that. So for example, El Salvador, which I've written about extensively, they use the Lightning Network for those types of smaller transactions, but you don't necessarily need it for that. That's not the prime use case. The prime use case of Bitcoin is a store of value. So when we think about money, there's usually three characteristics that people ascribe to money, the economists ascribe to money, and that is method of exchange, unit of account, and store of value. So there's thousands of methods of exchange around the world. Every currency around the world is a method of exchange. Unit of account, however, there's only a handful. There's the dollar, there's the euro, there's the yen, and now there's Bitcoin. But when you talk about store of value, none of those things are considered stores of value because of their inflationary properties. So if you're a high net worth individual living in the US, you're not storing your value in a case of cash. You're storing your value in buildings, in businesses, in sports teams, in gold, and now in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is that similar type of property. It's just digital, which makes it that much easier to move, to sell, to trade, to transfer it across borders. So it's basically it's property but improved.
And how much of a portfolio do you think should be allocated to cryptocurrency at this point? And has that changed now that we have a very pro-crypto president coming into office?
Absolutely. I think if you don't have at least 10% of your investment account in Bitcoin or Bitcoin-related assets, you're going to fall significantly behind. So that is our advice at Moonwalker Capital.
Bitcoin-related assets like what?
Sure. So Bitcoin ETFs are Bitcoin-related assets. MicroStrategy is a Bitcoin-related asset. Bitcoin miners such as Hut 8 and Mara are also Bitcoin-related assets. So there's other ways. Coinbase stock is another one. So there are assets that derive their value from Bitcoin and they add exponential leverage onto it.
So with MicroStrategy up 540% year to date, Coinbase up almost 80% year to date, you'd be comfortable buying in at these levels, or would you be waiting for a pullback?
I think we might see a small pullback in December, as usually around the end of the year for tax reasons, we see some of these valuations decrease, but I don't see a significant pullback coming in the near future.
Because of President-elect Trump?
There's just significant momentum in the market right now, and we're going to have more upward momentum in 2025.
And you talk about making room for other cryptocurrencies. ETH is up today, was up about 6%, now up about 5%. What are some of the other cryptocurrencies you think will see this adoption momentum like Bitcoin has?
So we've had a lot of issues with regulation in this country over the last few years with Gary Gensler, who's now stepping down. And we've had significant brain drain where when people were trying to issue cryptocurrencies for certain technological innovations, they had to do it abroad and they had to leave the country to do so. And so I'm hoping that a lot of those innovators and founders will come back to America and choose to innovate here.
So can you talk to us about any other cryptocurrencies that are on your radar that are that you're as bullish on as Bitcoin? Or is this really, I mean, we mostly just talk about Bitcoin. Is there a reason for that? Because that's the one to be in?
I think Bitcoin is the most proven asset class in our world, so that's the one we feel most comfortable recommending to people. However, there's certain financial infrastructure coins that are being built on top of Bitcoin right now. So like Stacks is one example, and it will allow Bitcoin to be more usable and more mobile and be built into financial infrastructure such as borrowing and lending and collateralization, which we see in TradFi, but that is still being built out in digital finance.
Okay, so talk to me about how you think this all will change in terms of how people financial plan for the future, even just as soon as next year when we see President-elect Trump actually take office. How will the conversation be different as you look ahead?
I think previously, whereas banks were scared to recommend crypto investments and ETFs to their clients, where it was as harsh as a Bank of America would freeze your account if they saw a transfer to Coinbase and they would consider that suspicious activity. Now the switch is going to flip, and a lot of investment advisors are actually going to be pitching these ETFs and other Bitcoin derivatives to their clients.
And that's strictly because there's going to be less regulation around it. I guess what I really am trying to wrap my head around is, President Trump has talked about Bitcoin, and I think that's certainly bullish for crypto, but why is it that he's going to be so good for crypto? And I mean, we're seeing it priced in right now, so we're seeing it happen right now, but why the bullishness?
You have to understand that these financial institutions, they have a lot of oversight and they have a lot of checks and balances, right? And even these institutional investors, aside from banks like endowments and sovereign wealth funds, they have several checks and balances above them as to where they allocate their capital, and nobody wants to make the wrong decision. So the fact that you now have an incoming president of the United States giving you a complete green light that this is now a legitimate asset and it will not be prosecuted, and the financial activity around it will not be, the financial innovation around it will not be prosecuted, is giving these decision makers the green light to go and allocate capital in a way that they were too scared to before.
Okay, so if those investors who maybe have a little FOMO that they didn't join in on the party are sitting there listening to you talking about Bitcoin at potentially 500,000, but potentially 80,000 before then, so definitely some volatility. What's your biggest piece of advice for those looking to get in?
My biggest piece of advice is don't wait, because this may be the last few weeks that you might be able to buy Bitcoin at 100K.
All right, we'll leave it there. So great to have you, Tiana Kuffman.
Thank you so much. Thank you.